A Simplex converted to a Great Western Railway Prairie tank. This is part 50, Multitasking for Beginners. Cleaning the buffers while doing something else at the same time. In this video, I'm going to show you the best way of cleaning up buffers. As you can see, the springs are a bit of a disaster really. The two bits of springs in each buffer. I think the person who cut the springs probably cut them too short, but I'm not going to go on about that because I've done the same in the past. This is a small Bosch electric drill, and it's the best way to clean up buffers. You can of course fit the buffer into the lathe, but using emery cloth and wet to dry sandpaper so close to a chuck can be risky. By using a small electric drill like this one on its highest speed, it's not as dangerous because there's no massive big chuck spinning around with a load of power to take your arm off. I'm using 135 grit emery cloth to start with because these buffers are in quite bad condition. They're not just dirty, oily and grimy, they're also quite rusty. After using the emery cloth, after a while I changed to wet to dry sandpaper. Or should I say, to keep one particular viewer happy, silicon carbide paper. Call it what you like, it's sandpaper and you can use it wet or dry. The front surface is also rusty, like the back surface. And once again I start off with the emery cloth, followed by the wet or dry abrasive. I'm doing all of this job using dry paper. I would normally apply some oil to the job, but this seems to be working okay as it is. If I do an A-B comparison with the buffer that I've just cleaned up, that's the one on the top, with the original, the one on the bottom, there's a big difference. All I have to do now is repeat the process 4 times. Some of the buffers were worse than others. And once I'd cleaned them all, I actually went back to clean up the rear face of each buffer to improve the appearance and remove machining marks. Quite a lot of viewers say, I wish I had a lathe, can I do this if I don't have a lathe? The answer is generally no. If you're going to be into model engineering, you need the tools to do the job. But doing this particular job this way in an electric drill is far better, as I mentioned earlier, than doing it in a lathe chuck. The finish is quite good. Not perfect, I don't want it to be perfect. This is not a new engine, and all the parts that I modify have to fit in with the existing state of the engine. That's 2 of them done, and now it's time to wash my hands. I always use this stuff, it's called Relieve, and it's a natural hand cleaner, and it's the best I've ever come across. I buy this stuff from a company in Bradford. Here's the address. You put a small amount of it on your hands, rub it in well, and then rinse it off. For the next job that you're going to see me do, my hands do need to be very clean, so I'm washing them with some antibacterial hand wash. Currently, on my thumb particularly, I do have some ingrained paint that will not come off. Why do my hands suddenly need to be so clean? Because I'm about to cook my dinner. Starting by peeling 3 onions. During my lifetime, I've had 2 wives, and I really don't think I want any more of those. At this stage, I'm expected to say, well, now I don't have a wife, I have to do all my cooking. But for quite a long time, in my past relationship with my second wife, I did most of the cooking. So there's nothing really new, I quite like cooking. I prefer the eating part at the end of the process. Anyway, what I'm doing is chopping 3 onions. 3 onions in a curry for my evening meal is a bit excessive, but what I normally do is make a lot more than I need, and I freeze it. I give some of the curry to my eldest daughter and her family. And with the current COVID-19 restrictions, my daughter and her family are part of my support bubble, so that's okay. It's quite handy really, they only live about 100 yards from where I am. I thought I would include a very arty shot in this video. This was completely unintentional, the shot of me stirring a pan on the cooker. I really wanted to show these. Now normally I would use fresh garlic and fresh ginger, but I don't have any of that. So for this curry I'm going to use the powdered stuff. I need to add plenty of tomatoes. I like a lot of tomatoes in my curry. Here are 2 cans of plum tomatoes which I bought in error. I would normally use chopped tomatoes, but thankfully this is a great time to try out one of my Christmas presents. Here's a tin of chopped tomatoes, and here is my Christmas present. It's a hand blender. I'm going to annihilate the plum tomatoes with it in a pan on the table. And those of you with keen eyesight will notice that in this clip there is a Barco spanner lurking amongst the rest of the spanners in my tobacco tin. Here's a top tip. Immediately after use, it's a good idea to clean the blender's cutter assembly under a hot tap. With the help of a small amount of cooking oil, the chopped onions are sizzling in the pan. I don't like my curries to be too greasy, so I've only used a very small amount of cooking oil. Most of the cooking of the onions is done in water. And while the onions are boiling away on the cooker, I think it's a good time to clean up the other two buffers. Nothing new here, exactly the same principle. By working at the other side, which I'm doing only for the video, occasionally the buffer kept riding up the sandpaper, so it's really better to do it from the other side. It's also important to change the cutting surface of the emery cloth frequently. If you watch carefully as I'm doing this job, you will see the build-up of metal particles and rust and dirt on the table. I also spent quite a lot of time cleaning up the inside edge of the buffer, mainly to remove tool marks and smooth it out. And now it's time for a very important curry operation, so once again I wash my hands. I added a tin of Italian chopped tomatoes to the liquidized plum tomatoes. And here I'm using my blender on the onions. Now this is something that's quite important. Do not blend all of the onions, just mash up a bit of them. If you cook them for long enough, they will all go very soft and mushy anyway. I'm just trying to save time. Here I'm adding some ground ginger, followed by some garlic granules. I'm making quite a good quantity of curry, so I'm adding a good quantity of the spices required to make it flavoursome. Fresh or frozen garlic and ginger is better than the powdered stuff, but I don't have any of that. Now it's time to add the main spices to the mix. I keep them in this aluminium pan. These are authentic spices that are bought from an Asian supermarket. And these are crushed chilies going in first. I don't have any fresh chilies either. This yellow stuff is called turmeric. How much do I put in? Well, I don't know, I just put it in. Time for some garam masala, followed by the very last bit of a packet of mixed masala. After adding these spices, I also added the chopped tomatoes. Then I gave the entire mixture a really good stir for quite a while. At this part of the job, it's quite important to keep the mixture moving, because the heat is quite high and I don't want to burn it. The black specks that you can see in the curry are from the crushed chilies. Now it's time to add some salt. How much? Well, it's down to experience as always. In the past I've added too much salt and then I haven't added enough, so I've got a good idea how much salt to add to a pan relative to its volume. A lot of people, when making curry, make the mistake of cooking the chicken first in a frying pan, but that isn't a good idea. If you do it that way, the chicken could be quite tough. This is the point of the process where you need to add the raw chicken into the mix. A few years ago, I started to make a series called Tamina's Kitchen with a young lady called Tamina who's a very good cook. Her curries are far better than mine, but she uses this stuff. It's called basar. Do be careful with the quantities of these spices because a lot of them are quite fierce. At this stage I added 2 more tins of chopped tomatoes. I quite like tomatoey curries anyway, and this is really a base for other things. You could use this curry and add other things to it at a future time after it's been frozen. After adding these further tomatoes, obviously the temperature dropped. Here I'm adding a bit of a spice that I thought was a bit lacking. And here I'm pouring myself a glass of this wine. I really like this wine, Lindeman's Gentleman's Collection. Apparently, cleaning buffers in an electric drill on the kitchen table and making a curry at the same time is thirsty work. Do not be tempted to add any of the wine to the curry. Here's the pan just coming to the boil. I waited until it fully came to the boil, stirred it constantly, and then I simmered it for quite a long time. And during the simmering process, I went back to the table and completely finished the cleaning of the buffer stocks, and as you can see, they look a lot better than they started off. I also cleaned up the towing hitch as well. This doesn't need to be very shiny because it's going to be painted. I'll finish off and eat my curry in the next episode. And also in the next episode I will be removing the valve gear, ready to clean that up too. All that remains is for me to say stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it appetizing. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.